Throughout history, the people of China have worked and fought with pride and tenacity. To the Chinese, the conquering of hardship is everything. So too with this man, legendary martial artist Bruce Lee, my father. He was a man of knowledge, strength, compassion, and love. But above all, he was a fighter who walked the path of the dragon. A path that many others would follow.
It was almost like an art form, a ballet, because the guy was incredible to watch. I mean, he had great chemistry, charisma.
You tried to go into a restaurant in Hong Kong, you immediately became aware of how big a star he was. And there was no star bigger than Bruce Lee in Asia. And I would probably say, even to this day, there is no star, certainly there is no Asian film star that has ever achieved the level of recognition and popular appeal that Bruce Lee had and continues to have to this day.
I was with him. I didn't fully understand, but he says, you know, I'm going to make movie pictures. And from these moving pictures, people are going to appreciate martial art. And when they start to appreciate martial art, they're going to appreciate the Chinese culture.
It is now over 25 years since my father's first movie. At that time, martial arts schools around the world were scarce. Today, largely because of his influence, more than 10 million students train in the USA alone. He awakened the interest in the martial arts and in doing so opened the world's eyes to the beauty and mystery of a culture and a people that had for so long been hidden under the veil of racial prejudice. At the heart of this culture is a spirit that encompasses tenacity, patience, and perseverance. A spirit that is drawn upon in times of hardship and is cultivated by the practice of martial arts. A spirit personified by Bruce Lee. At the heart of the martial arts of China is the Shaolin Temple, for this was where Kung Fu was first developed over 1,500 years ago. Today, the original temple still stands. The temple rates with the Tomb of Confucius and the Great Wall of China in its cultural importance to the Chinese people. In its entire history, no one other than a full-blooded Chinese has been permitted to train within its walls.
The significance of Kung Fu to the culture of Chinese people is immense. In fact, it's an integrated part of the culture. As far back as history is written, Kung Fu appears in all the cultural literatures and in every part of the society. For instance, in Tai Chi Chuan, the very foundation dates back to thousands of years. You can see it in written literature, you can see it in people's life, you can see it everywhere. It's just a very, very important part of Chinese culture. The Shaolin Temple is like the Mecca for Kung Fu. And so the temple is like the temple of the spirit, the center of the spirit. And so to us Kung Fu practitioners, Shaolin Temple means our Mecca.
In the 1850s, as Chinese people immigrated to Australia and the United States, they took with them this spirit and the martial arts that had helped develop it. But the secrets of the Shaolin Temple were not for the Westerners.
Well, our Chinese people, in the so-called traditional Chinese people in the old days, it is true they wouldn't teach their specialties or their special skills to foreigners simply because I suppose it's a matter of understanding each other.
Bruce Lee rejected this secrecy and would set up a chain of events that would eventually be felt even in Shaolin. The hardships endured by China were no more evident than in the 1850s, when China was ravaged by famine, floods, and war. Many looked to the gold fields of Australia and California as a way of establishing a new life.
The British Opium Wars created instability in southern China, and southern China was the site of immigration, not only to Australia, but also to the United States. So the arrival of the Chinese in 1849 with the gold rush represented forces of push. They're being pushed out of China by British imperialism, but they were also being pulled by the lure of gold mining and by the lure of jobs.
From these gold rush days, the Chinese became a race apart in their new country, separated by their dress, customs, and language. By the turn of the century, these Chinese communities had established many businesses, which then grew into small communities. These communities are today's Chinatowns, which can be found in many cities around the world. It was not until World War II that Western attitudes towards China started to change. China is a conquered ally of the Western democracies in the war against the Japanese. Publicized atrocities committed by the Japanese make us look at our own past attitudes.
A transformation that reaches from one extreme to the other, from the extreme of throwing rocks and stones at a single Chinese person on a street, from that extreme to the one of feeling empathy for and anxiety and for the Chinese as they were being defeated and being conquered and being massacred by the Japanese. That, I think, is a major change.
And don't forget, Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco. He traveled on a U.S. passport, but he was educated in Hong Kong and spoke fluent Cantonese. So he was one of that, I believe that generation that came after World War II that went a long way to breaking down a lot of stereotypes all over the world.
The 60s were a time of change, of a growing awareness of civil rights for many minority groups who would no longer tolerate their second-class status. The 60s were also the time that Bruce Lee started on his journey to try and change the racial attitudes of two cultures. Bruce Lee arrived in San Francisco in 1959 and later moved to Seattle.
I met Bruce Lee in 1959 when I went down to this particular location where they're working out. Why, first thing they told me was, do something to Bruce, throw a punch at him or do something. And but anyhow, he went through the motions and threw a wild punch at him, and before I knew it, he had me tied up into something that resembles a pretzel. But I felt those blows coming against my face that struck me like a hurricane coming at me, and it scared the living daylights out of me. And I immediately said to myself, my God, I got to learn something from this guy.
It was in Seattle that Bruce first broke the centuries-old taboo. Chinese Kung Fu is only taught to Chinese.
In Seattle, it wasn't so prevalent, but even here, there was some animosity against him teaching to outsiders because they felt that to teach the outsiders, it was a situation where you were giving a lot of secrets away to people that were physically much bigger than we are and that they would be using it against us.
Bruce arrived in Los Angeles in 1965. It was from here that he first started to reach a wider audience via the international martial arts magazine, Black Belt.
Bruce was controversial in the beginning because everything was steeped in real deep tradition, and some of these traditions go back hundreds, if not thousands of years, and with very little change. Bruce was hell-bent on changing some of this. So it was an interesting time at Black Belt magazine.
Dan Inosanto was Bruce's assistant instructor at his Los Angeles Jeet Kune Do school.
Like for example, in '61, when I wanted to learn Kung Fu, I was not allowed because I was not Chinese. When Bruce Lee started to teach Westerners, a lot of traditional Chinese didn't appreciate it. But as Sifu Bruce used to always tell me, he used to say that, morality and good consciousness and all that is not really dictated by race.
Bruce's skill was noticed at a martial arts demonstration, which later led to him being cast by Hollywood producer William Dozier in a new TV series, The Green Hornet. This exposed Bruce to Hollywood movie making and some of the stars of that time. Those who studied Jeet Kune Do with Bruce included Steve McQueen, Chuck Norris, and James Coburn.
So Bruce came over to the house, and I was living over on Tower Road, and it was just filled with energy, just boom, just bursting with energy. And so we talked for a little bit, and he said, "What have you been doing?" And then I said, "Well, all I've done is that things." "Yeah, but you did a lot of flicky stuff, flicky, bang, nothing really." I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "I've got a 1-inch punch that is better than anything you did." And I said, "Really? I'd like to see that." And he said, "Got a pillow?" And so I stood up, put a pillow in front of me, and hold it, and bang, like that. Knocked me into the chair. The chair fell down. I rolled over into the corner with a 1-inch punch. I got up and I said, "Let's go to work, man. That looks like fun." So we worked.
But even with powerful friends in the industry, Hollywood still placed significant barriers in front of Bruce because he was Chinese. One of the special qualities of Bruce Lee was that his presence on a film screen guaranteed that the picture would be electrifying. His deadly range of Jeet Kune Do techniques served to shock audiences into a state of awe.
I was speechless at the success of the film. I remember I was out of town and came back about 8 o'clock at night, and I lived in Hollywood, and we drove past the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and it was about 7 o'clock, and there was a line for Enter the Dragon, and I just got out in front of the theater, but I realized the line wasn't for the show in half an hour. The line was for the show in 2.5 hours, and I didn't believe people. I actually walked down the line and asked a couple of people, "Are you really standing in line for a film 2.5 hours from now?" So I was flabbergasted, and I still am today.
But it was not always like this. The entrenched racial attitudes of Hollywood were determined to restrict Bruce Lee to stereotyped roles.
The heavies have to be somebody. So there's always a use of somebody or some ethnic community that is identifiable to be the bad guy. It's difficult now to find these bad guys because we're not at war with anyone. There's nobody, I think, no flavor, a bad flavor of the month in that respect.
The sensitivities of Hollywood were very different in those days than they are today, where everybody is politically correct in Hollywood. I think the stories of Bruce and his run-ins with the Hollywood system are fairly well known to everyone. I mean, the story of how the TV series Kung Fu was developed, originally for Bruce to star, and the networks basically said they wouldn't use a Chinese in the leading role of the series.
In just 2 years, Hollywood studio attitudes would change dramatically. Bruce is determined to kick down the barriers that Hollywood has placed before him. Partly on the advice of his friend, James Coburn, he leaves for Hong Kong.
And I said, do the films, go there and do the films. You'll achieve something. The first couple of films, you know, you'll learn how to do it, and the second and third, you'll be able to do it really well, and you'll be the king of the heap by that time. And certainly it turned out that way. It was just a good guess on my part.
Bruce's career in terms of films was going nowhere. But the kinds of films that Bruce wanted to do were not the kinds of films that Hollywood was making. Bruce was a very smart man. He was a thinker, and he was a student of film just as much as he was a student of martial arts. And I think he realized that truly he needed to come back to Asia in order to take that first step. He knew very clearly once he made that step, once he was a recognized box office draw in Asia, the American studios would be interested.
Bruce arrived in Hong Kong in 1971 and struck a 2-picture deal with the film company Golden Harvest. The films are low budget and hastily constructed, but the big boss broke all box office records, outgrossing the previous Asian record holder, Sound of Music, in a matter of days. It was in his second film that a turning point in Bruce Lee's cinema career occurred. People who were in the audience say that they had never felt a moment like that in all of Hong Kong cinema history. The whole country, as one, felt the pain and the anger that flowed from the Japanese occupation. And at that moment, Bruce Lee became a hero to the Chinese people.
You were wanting to get in here. No. Tell you what, there's only one thing you need to do. Pretend you're a dog, and I'll take you in.
First of all, the sign is based on fact. That sign actually existed in a park in Shanghai, in the International Concession, and was there until 1948. A lot of Chinese in Hong Kong had been refugees from Shanghai and knew of the sign, and it was one of those embarrassments that they had to live with. The design of the film, I think, was an early call to, if you will, Chinese nationalism.
Fists of Fury smashes all box office records across Southeast Asia. Lee asks for and gets total control of his next picture. He produces, writes, directs, and stars in Way of the Dragon. The impact of Bruce's films in Asia is so huge that Hollywood can no longer ignore him. He is offered the lead in a film titled Blood and Steel. The result is the first Hollywood-Hong Kong co-production to be later renamed Enter the Dragon. Bruce puts his heart and soul into the film, involving himself in every stage of production, as well as the tremendous physical demands of the fight sequences. The film is a huge success. It makes Lee the first Chinese superstar in the world.
Yeah, Bruce used to joke about Bronson and McQueen and Eastwood as the number that they churned out, and he thought he could do at least the same number and outgross them very easily.
Warner Brothers were on the phone saying, "You got to talk to Bruce for us," because he'd passed me the phone in his office. He said, "We're offering him 3 times more than anyone has ever gotten, more than Taylor and Burton had gotten." He said, and the guy is not making any sense to us. Anyway, we hung up the phone, and I was talking to Bruce. I said, "How can you turn down that offer?" He said, "George, I've made 1 movie, and I've already made 3 times what they're offering me." I said, "Okay, makes sense." He said, "Besides, I gave them an opportunity to use me in America for the Kung Fu series. And they decided to use someone else, a dancer, as a matter of fact, who knew nothing about Kung Fu. And they thought that the American audience wasn't ready to accept a Chinese star. And here I proved them wrong. So I said, "You certainly have."
Bruce had succeeded, not because of Hollywood, but in spite of it. Discussions are being held with Lee to do films with Steve McQueen and Sophia Loren. The Hollywood studios finally recognize Lee's true worth. But he does not live to see the success he has worked so hard for. 2 weeks before Enter the Dragon is released, Bruce Lee dies. The shock of Bruce Lee's death was followed by an aching sense of loss amongst his countless admirers around the world. It seemed impossible that a man so vital, so much in love with life, could be so suddenly taken. This sense of loss was felt nowhere greater than in Hong Kong. The champion of the Chinese, the man who had given such enormous pride, was gone. Bruce Lee was no more. While on the verge of a worldwide superstardom that was yet to peak. A former James Bond, Australian actor George Lazenby, was with Lee the day he died.
The day he died, we had lunch together. And so we had a screen and we're sitting in the back of this restaurant. He said, I got a headache. And I thought, Jesus, you know, I often get a headache, but it's usually from drinking. And he said, I don't have a headache very often.
I got a call from him one day in May, and I was surprised. I didn't even know that he was in Los Angeles. I said, what are you doing here? He says, well, I've come to have some medical tests. He says, I've been fainting. I said, fainting? He says, yeah. He says, I've been fainting. He says, maybe there won't be a Bruce Lee. I said, come on, what are you talking about? Don't talk like, what are you saying such a thing? But I was a little bit, wasn't the kind of person to say things like that, you know? It was very against his disposition to kind of cop to any sense of fragility or anything like that, I thought. So I became a little concerned, and I remember calling him back, and I don't remember if it was a hotel or where it was, a day or two later. And I said, so how's everything? You know, and he said, great. He said, the doctor told me I have a body of an 18-year-old. And that was the last I spoke to him. I think probably later that month, he died.
I said, but don't worry about tonight if you don't feel well. He said, if I said I'm gonna be there, I'll be there. And I was waiting with Raymond Chow that evening for Bruce. And he was about half an hour late, and it's not like him to be late, so I called. I said to Raymond, I said, where's Bruce? Do you know where he is? He said, oh yeah, I know where he is, this is the number. And I called there. And the girl answered and said that he's asleep, I can't wake him up. And I said, well, you better call an ambulance or something. And then I left the restaurant, went back to the hotel, and when I got into the room, the hotel, the phone was ringing, I picked it up. Bruce Lee's dead, what do you think?
With all the great physical conditioning, that he was probably taxing himself extraordinarily, and that his nervous system seemed to be so tuned and so on edge throughout the filming, in the beginning of the filming particularly, that to me that there would be some kind of odd anomaly or extraordinary susceptibility to something, some substance that the average person, you know, has no trouble with, could affect him greatly. It didn't strike me as being out of bounds.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I was over on the street, I run Jim Sa Jui. Then some people, hey Jackie, Bruce Lee died. I said, no, you're kidding. No, it's serious.
The shock was unbelievable, because here he was at lunchtime, fit and well, except for his minor headache. Anyway, I went on to do some kung fu movies there myself, and through injuries and what have you, I got to know the doctor who did the autopsy, and they said it was just like a blood vessel burst inside his head and started leaking, like an inner tube and a tire got too thin and just started leaking, and that was causing a headache. I think it was just overtrained. A lot of people say he got hit there or whatever, or secret this or secret that, but I just think he was too dedicated to his training. It was sad.
The true measure of a man's life lies in his accomplishments and in the positive things that he has passed on to others during his lifetime. My father lived for 32 years, and during that time, he developed a revolutionary approach to the martial arts. He proved Hollywood wrong when he became the first Asian superstar and established a new global film genre, paving the way for the many that would follow. Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Jackie Chan. But most of all, he showed that racial barriers can be torn down, sometimes in the most unexpected way.
How about now? I'm all right. Little blood, that's all. Oh.
I think martial arts movies have had an incredible impact at breaking down barriers with cultures. And it's interesting because I worked out that it's like music, you know, rock and roll, pop songs and everything. It's a medium that no matter whether you understand the lyrics or not, people can enjoy it.
Of course, martial arts is not a strictly male domain. In the 70s, Angela Mao broke new ground when she established herself as a major action star in the Asian market. Today, more women are seeing that martial arts has something to offer them.
Perhaps the most significant thing I've seen in martial arts over the last 15 years is more women are starting to participate in the sport. Women can go to martial arts, feel comfortable with other women around, and learn a self-defense technique as well as exercising.
Cynthia Rothrock has made her presence felt with a succession of hit action films. While Bond girl Michelle Yeoh displays a skill most men would envy. A great many martial arts stunts are employed to make movies more entertaining. Unfortunately, some less scrupulous practitioners devalue the martial arts by attempting to convince others that what is portrayed on film is totally real. Dan Inosanto recalls Bruce Lee's attitude to martial arts trickery.
He would try to always disprove a lot of the myths, because he said that's cheating the public. For an example, I remember one time we were watching a demonstration in Chinatown where this guy had the spear up against his throat and he's pushing it. And he said, well, and I said, oh, isn't that fantastic? He goes, well, what is he proving? Does that mean if I take the spear and I put it in his throat that it's not going to go through? At that time, he just yelled, he said, let me handle that spear. I'll make it go through. See, he was that kind of a person.
Yeah. Okay, this is again a trick, but I wouldn't advise trying it anyway because there really is some technique involved to it. When I push it in here, my hands here at my fingers are lifting upwards. The force is actually going upwards into the neck. When anything is bent like this, watch. See, where does the force go? Straight up. It doesn't go in, and that's the whole trick.
While the skill of Jackie Chan is obvious, what of the breaking stunts we so often associate with martial arts? Australian John Duncan, current world record holder who broke 5,000 bricks in under 1 hour, is well qualified to speak.
The dynamics of breaking are quite incredible, really. You don't hit the blocks just from the top, you focus to hit right through the blocks. Really, if you focus and you put your mind into it, you can do anything.
Martial arts, like anything else in the world where there's a buck to be made, you've always got con men, charlatans. Because literally they don't know anything, so they try to make money out of gullible Westerners in particular by claiming something supernatural.
Hail to Kung, our spiritual master! Wait.
The reality is that the supernatural has no place in real martial arts. Martial arts movie stunts are a combination of special effects, editing, and the skill of highly talented practitioners. All martial arts are governed by the laws of physics, not magic.
One of the common tricks used in the martial arts is to say that internal energy causes the bottle to break when it's hit. In fact, it's physics. If you hit this bottle, pushing the air through, it will force the base of the bottle out. So if you hit it from this point, that's what happens.
These tricks, once accepted as part of Kung Fu, have given way to a global awareness of the martial arts as they really are. For while Bruce Lee opened the eyes of the Western world to Chinese martial arts, he also opened the eyes of China to the scientific training procedures and pragmatism of the West.
Bruce Lee was the bridge between East and West. He brought Kung Fu to the West, but he also brought Western technology to the East in the form of filmmaking techniques and also in the way he approached martial arts. Training methods, for example. Training as an athlete for martial arts was something that was not done prior to Bruce Lee.
Yeah, since we start to introduce Wushu to the foreign friends, with the understanding of each other, we also have learned quite a lot from the foreign friends. Western countries have in psychology, physiology, and also those areas really help those traditional Chinese martial arts practitioners to improve their knowledge and give them more scientific results.
But although we have all learned much from each other, there are still a few who will choose to believe the unbelievable.
Somebody came over to me and started talking to me, and I was busy doing something, and he was saying, "Man, I understand that Bruce is alive." I said, "No, he's dead." He said, "I understand he's alive." And I said, "He's dead." "No," he says, "I've got it on good source that he's alive and he's living in a cave in Hong Kong, just like the legends were supposed to. They lived in the mountains of China. He's alive in a cave in Hong Kong. He's just waiting for the right time to come out." It's like an analogy with Christ. I said, "No," I said, "his wife thinks he's dead." He said, "What do women know?"
In the Honan province of China stands the Shaolin Temple, the birthplace of Chinese martial arts. Legend has it that a wandering monk appeared in the 6th century and brought Shaolin boxing to the temple. As time went on, the monks developed the martial arts to a high level as they came to realize that the extreme physical demands of Kung Fu seemed only to complement their otherwise meditative lives. The physical and spiritual strengths gained from Kung Fu were passed on from generation to generation, but only from Chinese to Chinese. This changed just 10 years after Bruce Lee's death, when a non-Chinese trained in the Shaolin Temple. Walt Missingham is one of Australia's martial arts pioneers. He hosted Australia's first martial arts television series, in which martial arts choreography was used to enhance the presentation of fight sequences. martial arts history was made when Walt traveled to the Honan province.
When I trained in the Shaolin Temple in '83, this was a significant event. It was a passing over. It was a recognition that the time had come for these barriers to start breaking down. The Shaolin Temple, until this time, was exclusively the province of the Chinese people. So what happened in the early '80s at Shaolin broke traditions that go back over 1,500 years. So this is tremendously significant, both culturally and historically.
There is something here that we have learned from the monks of Shaolin, from something that they have shared. Whether teacher or student, both are richer for the exchange.
Since the early '80s, Wushu started opening more and more to the world. And there was the very first foreign people who went to the Shaolin Temple to train. I think it was back in early '81 or early '82. It's just a matter of understanding each other. The traditional Chinese martial arts practitioners in the old days, they even wouldn't let any other Chinese to learn from them, let alone foreigners.
Martial arts is a great equalizer. You don't look at race when someone kicks you in the stomach or hits you in the head. You don't think, that's a Chinese person or that's an African person who's hit me. You just get hit. And so martial art at its base level is an equalizer. You don't think in terms of race, you just think in terms of the person who is in front of you.
On the international stage, Jackie Chan has certainly made his presence felt with an enviable capacity to deliver ever more exciting films.
And that time, not talking about my young, just talking about after Bruce Lee died, one of company makes me want to be an action star. And that time, everybody knows Kung Fu, knows action, can be an action star. Everything learn opposite Bruce. Nobody can beat him, okay, everybody can beat him. He kick high, I kick low, he punch angry, I punch funny, do a lot of funny face, come, everything run it down. Then, totally opposite than Bruce Lee. Now I'm doing more like acrobatic, dangerous stunts. You must keep fighting, you know, to the second floor, to the boat scene, to the helicopter, to the motorcycle, then, boom, finish. Then the audience, loving.
Today, many of Bruce Lee's students work tirelessly to use the martial arts to bring people together.
Martial art, whether it be karate or kung fu, has allowed the blacks, the Latins, the Asians, and the Western people to come as one unit, because they're trying to perfect themselves in a martial art. So in many ways, it's brought the races together, and it unites people rather than divide people.
Martial arts is a kind of state of mind. It's a way of being, and it's something that you apply not only in your, in conflict with somebody, but in relationships with other people. You know, it's energy. It's an exchange of energy. And as Bruce always said, the only thing that you have to overcome, you overcome yourself. The enemy is the self, not anybody outside. You find that person and you integrate yourself with it, and then you can move straightly on.
During World War II, being of Japanese ancestry, even though I was born in this country, it became law that anybody of any Japanese extraction was rounded up and put into, they called them internment centers, but the true identity of being incarcerated behind barbed wire with search towers, it connotates itself being a concentration camp. Up until I was about 15 or 16, I thought I was just as white as you are, but all of a sudden I found out when the war came along that this wasn't true, and then to be incarcerated for a period of 5 years or so, it just literally destroyed me. And when I came back out, I couldn't walk down the street. If you were behind me, I had to stop and let you pass me because I felt like it wasn't right. It wasn't good enough to be walking in front of you. I'd walk into a restaurant in the middle of the day and they wouldn't tell me to get out, but they just ignored me as if I wasn't there. But it was so embarrassing, so intimidating to me that there were times when I was probably in there for up to 3 hours before I got up enough nerve to walk out. I'd walk into a barber shop in the middle of the day and they'd tell me they were closed. And so I know what the intimidation and what it is to be put down like that. But Bruce brought me out of that, and so my role in life now is to try to pay him back in any way I can that would perpetuate his image and his reputation in terms of what he did for us, you know, and mankind in general.